Right. Welcome everybody to this afternoon's strategic planning. Just run through bits of agenda with first off. Phones, if you can put them on silent or switch them off. Right. Membership of this committee, looking at it, everybody's here who's supposed to be. Yeah. Item 2, minutes of the previous meeting. Can we pass those as a correct record? Oh, Donald won't hear. Right. Thank you. Item 3, interests and lobbying. So I'll start off on my left with Councillor Kane.
Just various correspondence on application 2018/91661, which is agenda item 11.
Right. Councillor Patterson.
Similar.
Councillor Walker.
Same for me.
Councillor Pinnock.
Item 12, that's the one after that. I've had an email from the applicant's agent.
Councillor Firth? No. Councillor Bellamy?
Same as the others, as well as I've been copied into an email from Councillor Bolt as well regarding page 21 that I've seen.
I've got page 21 and I have seen that email what Donna received from Councillor Bolt. Page 43 and page 77. Number 4, admission of the public. This is a meeting done in public. It is recorded and it is on live webcast. Item 5, deputations and petitions. As far as I know, we don't.
None received, yeah.
Thank you. Item 6, any public questions? No. Site visits did take place this morning at Bankwood Way at Birstall, at Westgate, Etlandwyke, and at Golka, Green Gardens at Golka. Next, local planning authority appeals. I believe we've got one, and that's Elaine.
Thank you, Chair. We've had one notification of an appeal decision that relates to development at Hagwood Stone Quarry at Woodhead Road, Home Firth. The proposal was for the formation of new access from existing stone yard to adjacent storage area, including excavation, engineering works and associated tree works to TPO trees. The inspector allowed the appeal. He considered the 3 main issues relating to this were whether the proposal was inappropriate development in the green belt, the effect of the proposal on the character and appearance of the area, and do other considerations amount to very special circumstances that justify the development. The inspector considered that the proposal related to the existing operations of the stone yard and distribution and other operations, and therefore it wasn't inappropriate development. The proposal was screened by existing buildings and would be set behind those buildings at a lower level, and therefore considered that it wasn't harmful to the openness of the green belt or the character of the area. Although he indicated that in his opinion it was appropriate development, the inspector also considered whether very special circumstances did apply, and again he considered that, bearing in mind that this was related to an existing business operation and because of the circumstances involved, that you could actually indicate that very special circumstances were appropriate in this instance. So, as I say, the appeal was allowed. Thank you, Chair.
Next, we move on to Azak. Well,
Could I just make a comment on that?
yeah.
I'm accepting everything what the inspector said, but on the 2 items that you've just raised, it's subjective, isn't it? And that's the nature of planning, and I understand that. And I don't think we should be put off as a committee making them decisions, because whether it is inappropriate or appropriate, it's a decision that we can make as a committee rather than it then being passed on. That is the rule of law, if you like. That the fact is that they can take it to another place for a decision to be made. But I think on many occasions we've had some good results as far as inspectors are concerned, and I think on this occasion I don't think this is a good result, because these members actually took into consideration whether it were appropriate and whether there were special circumstances there, and we went on we fell onto the other side. And I think I wouldn't want us as a committee to be put off making decisions of this sort of nature, because in most parts I think they do fall down on our side. Thank you, Chair.
Well said that, Paul. Remember it well. Said we give it a thorough going over before we come up with a decision, and I can't remember the score exactly, but I'm pretty sure it was something like 7-0. Yeah. Right, crack on with today. Page 21. This is Brunswick Street, Eckmondwike. Glenn.
Thank you, Chair. Before I present the application, I'd just like to draw members' attention to the late update and the comments that have been received from Councillor David Sheard, comments that have been received from the Local Flood Authority and from the opposed Heckmondwike Railway Line Development Group. The application site comprises of land associated with a former railway cutting. It occupies approximately 2.7 hectares, and you can see on the aerial photograph I've outlined it in red there. The topography of the site reflects the previous use. The land is predominantly comprises of a deep-sided cutting. Original land levels rise from Walkley Lane down here to the north in this direction. The cutting actually cuts across a hillside, so the levels on the eastern side here are higher than on the west, on this side here. There is a public right-of-way that runs adjacent to the eastern boundary, which runs along here from Walkley Terrace and links up with Horton Street at the top here. The nearest residential properties are located to the west, here, around Walkley Avenue, and at the southeastern corner, down here, off Walkley Terrace. There are other residential properties in the area, primarily over here, around Horton Street, Brunswick Street, etc. The character of the area is predominantly residential on this side here, but then on the western and southern parts of the site, as you can see on the aerial photograph here, there are quite a number of commercial developments. The applicant seeks outline planning permission to develop the site for residential purposes, with all matters reserved except the point of access. You can see here on these photographs that were taken recently the character of the existing site. You can see that it's naturally regenerated over many, many years. So you have semi-mature trees, grassland, etc. Hope I can see now. I'm afraid I can't see my notes. Is it possible? Okay. I'll just go back to the previous photographs. This is looking down to the south towards Walkley Lane. This is looking west across towards Murfield, north towards Horton Street, and then these other photographs are actually in the cutting itself, again looking south. This is looking back up the cutting from Walkley Lane. Indicative plans submitted with the application indicate that this proposal would involve a significant cut and fill operation using existing material to create a suitable platform in order to construct the dwellings on. The adjacent land would then be retained using gabion structures. There's an indicative cross-section here across the site which indicates how that would work. Effectively, the predominant quantity of material will be taken from the eastern side of the site here and then taken down into the cutting itself in order to create an area that's suitable for the dwellings to be constructed on. The area would then be retained, as I indicated, with gabion structures, which are shown on this longitudinal section. So you'd actually end up in certain areas with a terraced stepped retaining structure retaining the land. Some members will recall that there was a previous planning application to develop this site which was determined earlier this year. The application was refused. That did involve a significant level of tipping associated with the import of inert waste in order to facilitate development. The applicant has submitted this application to address the issues raised in that previous refusal. This does not include the import of waste in order to facilitate development, and there is a reduction in the number of houses that would be proposed. Just for your reference, I've got a couple of plans here. This was included on the original application earlier this year, which shows 96 dwellings and pretty much all of the site being developed. The indicative layout that's been provided by the applicant in this case shows a significant part of the site remaining undeveloped, particularly in this area here, which is the northern section, this area running down the western boundary, and this area at the southern end of the site. The applicants provided a 3D model which, hopefully if you can see on here, does indicate how the residential properties would sit within the cutting. As you can see, they are still below the level of the surrounding land. However, the land has been built up in order to facilitate the development. This sequence just runs through the actual cutting itself. It must be stressed at this point, however, that this is an outline application only looking to seek permission for the point of access. So any detailed design of dwellings, numbers of dwellings, etc. will be dealt with by a subsequent reserved matters application and could change in order to accommodate constraints within the site. Full assessment has been provided with the committee report, but I'll just briefly go through the key issues. The majority of the site is unallocated in the unitary development plan, although it's identified as a wildlife corridor and potential pedestrian cycle route. However, a small part of the site in the northeastern section is allocated as urban green space as part of a wider designation. That can be seen on this plan here. This is the wider designation of urban green space which has been carried forward into the local plan. This lozenge-shaped or triangular-shaped section of land here was in the UDP allocated as part of that wider urban green space allocation. However, only the darker shaded purple bit has been carried forward in the local plan, so it's reduced by probably about 35–40%. It's considered that whilst this land is urban green space and would be included as part of this development site, it would be more than offset by the undeveloped area of the site that's indicated on the northern section of the development, which is in this area here. Consequently, officers considered that it would actually accord with UDP policy and local plan policies. Whilst the application doesn't seek permission for the layout of the design of the development, officers consider that subject to potential design changes at the reserve matter stage, the site can accommodate the scale of development that the applicant is suggesting. Furthermore, it's considered that the final design of the development can be carried out in such a way that it would harmonise with its surroundings. The nearest residential properties, as I pointed out earlier, are here, to the west of the site, to the southeast here, and to the northeast up here. Some of these sites do immediately abut the development site. However, it's considered that because of the topography involved here, that the impact of the development will be minimised because it will be set below surrounding ground level. And from longer distance, when seen within the landscape, it won't actually have a significant impact on the vista when seen from wider areas. The applicant has provided an ecological assessment which considers the potential for this development to adversely affect local ecology. These documents have been reviewed by officers who agree with its conclusions that the ecological value of this site is relatively low, and it's considered that ecological enhancements could actually be achieved through this development. The site is in flood risk zone 1, therefore at low risk of flooding. A drainage strategy has been submitted, and the applicant has indicated that in their opinion this can be satisfactorily achieved. However, the lead local flood authority has indicated that there may be more sustainable ways of draining the site, and continues to maintain its objection at this stage. With regard to highways, the proposed site access would be via Horton Street, which will be on the shoulder of the corner here. Potential impacts on the local highway network have been considered in the committee report, but I will pass you across to my colleague Peter Firth, who is representing the Council's Highways Development Management team, who can give you a little bit more detail on that. Thanks, Peter.
Through you, Chair. Generations associated with the proposed development are estimated at 18 in, 34 out in the AM peak and 35 in, 22 out in the PM peak. Access to and from the site is estimated via Walkley Lane, to Walkley Lane via Brunswick Street and Church Street, and also to High Street via Church Lane. So that generation is diluted by those three access routes. Queue lengths at the three junctions have been provided by the applicant. This survey, undertaken in November 2018, measured queue lengths every 5 minutes over the peak hours and shows minimal queue lengths over the hour. The maximum recorded queue is 7 vehicles waiting to exit Church Lane onto High Street. Trips generated by the development are estimated to add 1 vehicle to that maximum queue. The site is access is proposed off Horton Street. This has been the subject of a road safety audit. The junction design achieves the required sight lines, and swept path analysis has demonstrated that refuse vehicles can access the site. The internal layout, including how the potential Spen Greenway link and the existing footpath will be accommodated, is not addressed at this time, but would be subject to a future application. The site can access bus stops on both High Street and Walkley Terrace within a 400-metre walk distance. On this basis, Highways raise no objections to the application.
Thank you, Peter. Just for members' information, 155 individual objections have been raised in connection with this application. The issues raised and associated responses have been included in the committee report and update. It's recommended that committee delegate approval of this application and the issuing of the decision notice to the Head of Strategic Investment in order to complete the list of conditions, including those contained in the report, following resolution of the flood risk and drainage issues. Thank you, Chair.
I am Colin Berry and I represent Spen Valley Civic Society. Our objection concerns the principle of development. The planning officer's report is both imprecise and inaccurate in its description of the site. It is not unallocated in either the UDP or the draft local plan. In the UDP, it is designated both as a green corridor, a purpose which it currently still fulfills, and as a pedestrian cycleway route. In the draft local plan, it is designated as a core walking, cycling and riding network, designed to link the existing provision at either end of the site. In both cases, the intention was, and as far as we know still is, to create a circular route linking with the Spen Valley Greenway. The fact that it has not been developed as such during the lifetime of the UDP is a shameful indictment of the lack of attention and investment made in Heckmondwike by Kirklees Council. The Heckmondwike area is in desperate need of this kind of infrastructure. It is densely populated with limited access to open space. The roads are very congested and dangerous. No one in their right mind would consider cycling through Heckmondwike. This is at a time when nationally we are trying to establish safe, healthy and attractive modes of travel, reduce dependency on car use and promote more ecologically friendly alternatives. The Council appears to be going in the opposite direction. The suggestion that the road serving the proposed housing development is a cycle walking route is unacceptable. It's just another road. It does not meet the definition of core walking cycling routes. If you're in doubt about this, ask the experts, Sustrans, who I believe have made comment during this consultation process. In conclusion, this site should not be considered for housing through the existing UDP, as it is not allocated for this purpose. It is designated as a green corridor which will cease to exist should the development be approved, and as a cycle route for which no provision is made in the current application. I've got 2 more lines to go. Neither should this site be considered for housing through the local plan. Its status is that of a rejected housing allocation as a consequence of the site assessment process undertaken by the Council during the plan's consultation stage. This was referred to as Site H2571. As with the UDP, the application does not take account of the local plan's designation as a core walking, cycling and riding route, and no provision is made in the application to enable this requirement to be delivered. It should not be seen as a windfall allocation as described in the Planning Officer's report. Thank you.
We have Victoria Harrington.
I am a local resident. I live on Sunnyside. I object strongly to the proposal and ask the committee to totally reject it, as you did with the previous one this year. The issues are the same in the terms of highways, ecology, loss of green space, but inexplicably the planning officer is recommending approval this time. Why is this application being rushed through, even though committee has had insufficient information to make a proper and considered decision? Whose interests are best served by approving this application so prematurely? There are so many outstanding, serious issues with this application that it is nonsensical to approve today. The application is contrary to so many UDP and local plan policies, and there are substantial and significant objections from highways, drainage, public rights of way and Sustrans that have not been resolved. How can it be approved with these questions outstanding? How can you make a proper and informed and fair decision to the people in Hetman Wyke? I understand it's unprecedented that such an application could be recommended for approval with such substantial matters outstanding. It is not acceptable to recommend a conditional approval at this stage. What is the rush? We believe that the process to date has been unfairly conducted. We have funded 2 detailed objections prepared by a planning lawyer. This ran to 33 pages, analysis of contraventions. This has not been addressed in the report to committee. The contraventions and the conflicts with policy have been dismissed or ignored. Despite submitting a formal legal objection, we had no notification that this application was coming to committee today. It was totally unexpected in light of the substantial unresolved objections by highways, drainage and rights of way. And we're appalled at how this application could be recommended for approval today. We haven't even had the opportunity to see, let alone comment on, the latest document from Highways referred to by the planning officer yesterday in his update, since it wasn't on the website. This is not the way to conduct a fair appraisal of an application. Proper and due process has not been followed, with all of these matters fully addressed prior to any recommendation to the committee on such a complex and contentious application. There should be fairness to all. This process must be open and transparent and not give rise to a suspicion that a deal has already been done, negotiations agreed behind closed doors, contrary to the interests, wishes and feelings of local people who have to put up with the misery that this development will cause. This is not a normal piece of land. These are not straightforward issues. The site is huge, a deep cut of railway, about 7 acres. A railway line full of wildlife with great potential to be linked up to the Greenway. Already, 2 ill-advised developments have taken place further up the line, and if this third one is permitted, the opportunity to meaningfully extend the Greenway will be extinguished. Please weigh up the balance of harm to the hundreds of residents surrounding this site, the commuters using our roads, against the narrow interests of the developer of this site, who has refused to engage with Sustrans to open up the Greenway. We don't want it, and Hetman Wyke doesn't want it. Yeah, I don't think Harriet's representative has maybe been able to make it. So.
Victoria will now speak on behalf of Harriet Young, who was unable to make the meeting.
I'm reading this as if it were Harriet. Hello, my name is Harriet Young and I live at 5 Walkley Terrace in Hetman Wyke. We bought our home and moved in August 2014. Myself, Daniel, our daughter Evangelina and our cat Elvis. In December 2016, we welcomed our son Sebastian. Sadly, shortly after birth, he fell very ill and was taken to Pinderfields 4 hours after birth, and shortly afterwards was transferred to the LGI, where he lived for the first month of his life. He was diagnosed with PPHN, persistent pulmonary hypertension of the newborn, secondary to sepsis, and was given a 15% chance of survival. He was placed on nitric oxide and was oscillated, a more aggressive form of ventilation, involving a tube being put down the airways and continually pumping air into his tiny lungs to prevent them from closing and sticking together. After a long few weeks, Seb was able to breathe on his own. He had other battles, one of which was seizures due to oxygen starvation, the treatment for which caused his improvements in breathing to reoccur, and he was placed back on life support. Happily, seizures were brought under control, and with a little help from medication, his breathing stabilised. On New Year's Eve, we were again faced with Seb being moved back to intensive care and being re-intubated, and we were told that due to the damage caused by being intubated and oscillated for so much of his short life, he had damage and scarring of his airways. On 15th of January, we were finally able to bring Seb home. Even now, we can't believe how lucky we are. However, we still have battles due to the narrowing of his airways. We had to get rid of the cat, and our neighbours have confirmed we are regular ambulance users due to Seb's struggles to breathe. We are lucky enough to say that we have the privilege of being seen in Dewsbury out of hours instead of having to go to Pinderfields. I'm sure you will understand we have serious fears over this proposal. We overlook this site. The effect on air pollution is to us terrifying. Our son's health is under threat. From the initial proposal of filling the railway line to the increase of vehicles in the area, we are scared. This will be on our doorstep. The only way we could be closer to this is if we lived in the house straight across the road from us. My daughter is scared that this means her brother won't be able to live with us. I am scared that at some point, with the increase of air pollution, my son is going to become so ill, he is hospitalised to the point that he will require intubation again. I'm sorry. No, it's okay. Yeah, I'm okay. Sorry. I implore you, don't pass this proposal. We are just one family who is going to have a potentially huge and damaging effect on. I could list many other reasons for refusing this proposal. There are people here who can cover that much more eloquently than I can. So perhaps selfishly, my speech is just about us four and the truly life-altering effect this would have on our lives and, most importantly, on our son's life. Sorry.
Jones. I'm a local resident and I'm objecting to the planning application with regard to the ecological impact and impact upon wildlife. I live on Horton Street, which is adjacent to the proposed development of the old railway cutting. Heckman-Wag is a massive concrete and traffic with very little green space, and the railway cutting is one of the few really wild green spaces locally. A neighbour of mine recently called it the lungs of Heckman-Wag, another a green haven in an urban sprawl. The report from Middlemarch Environmental notes that it is, and I quote, a mosaic of habitats that has developed on site. In particular, the grassland, scrub and scattered trees which are considered to be significant on the site and above. In the absence of a significant disturbance, this has created a site capable of supporting a range of wildlife which links into further semi-natural habitats of the immediate east, north and south of the site. Indeed, the railway cutting is a vital green corridor linking the Spen Ringway to the Spenber Greenway, but also to the small area of woodland bordering the cutting and next to Horton Street, in fact behind my house. I've lived here for 18 years and know the site well, as I use the pathway at the top of the cutting twice daily to get to the Greenway with my dog. It's got close proximity to the fishing pond that borders the Greenway, which has got great crested newts, as well as herons and other wildlife there. In fact, in the springtime, the pond behind my house actually bubbles with frogs and toads. I don't know whether there are newts because they lay single eggs and they aren't as forthcoming as the frogs. Sorry, I lost my place now. However, it's only since I've recently retired that I've found out how much wildlife there is around this area, as well as seeing and hearing foxes, kestrels and sparrowhawks. Kestrels and sparrowhawks are common here, and over the last 2 years a pair of buzzards have made it part of their hunting range. In the summer, a neighbour and I stood at the bottom of the Horton Street by the horse chestnut tree watching bats catch insects at dusk around one of the lampposts. and in the spring, my husband and another neighbour stood watching a woodpecker in another tree. When the developer had the mature trees and brambles cut down and the footpath bulldozed only a few years ago, it was not only very unsightly and a mud bath to walk along in wet weather, there was a marked reduction in the variety of birds that came to our garden feeders. However, amazing as nature is, as you can see by the photographs, many of the bushes and trees have reseeded and the site is slowly returning to its previous green. And in the summer months, classes of students from the local grammar school can be seen to audit. Sorry? Oh, right, okay. I just would like to end by saying that there's been many studies that have proved that spending time in nature has been shown to produce levels and patterns of chemicals in the brain associated with lungs, low stress. And this small green area, which is well used by local residents and wildlife alike, needs to be protected from the impact of yet more buildings and traffic.
We've got Martin Robinson.
I am a local resident, father of a small baby, and I live on Horton Street, directly opposite the proposed development. I object to the application on many grounds. However, of the objections received, 95% of them made reference to concerns about the impact upon the local traffic and congestion. It was widely reported in 2017 that data from the transport research company, INRIX, showed that the B6117 road in Heckmondwike to be the 9th most congested B road in the UK and the 4th most congested in the UK outside of London. The proposed development will only add further traffic to this already miserably congested area. All of the streets near the proposed site are narrow rat runs for drivers, attempting to avoid town centre congestion. Parked cars also restrict traffic to effectively one direction at a time. The traffic survey is keen to point out that there isn't much queuing traffic, but fails to recognise the true extent of the congestion due to the sheer volume of vehicles which is contributing towards dangerous levels of nitrogen dioxide. Is it any wonder that Heckmondwike already has the highest level of air pollution in the Kirklees area? Out of 21 small towns in Yorkshire, only Pontefract has a greater accident hotspot than Church Street, and statistics show that there were 76 collisions causing injury at this spot within the last 5 years. I feel the highway report is both irresponsible and unsafe if it thinks that this development will not have any impact upon the levels of traffic, noise, pollution and road safety in the area. Not only are there the long-term effects of further congestion and pollution, but there is the horrendous initial burden on the narrow streets of the proposed site traffic and HGVs. Unfortunately, an intolerable burden on the local roads causing dangerous blind spots already exists, and I would question how on earth would site traffic arrive and leave at the building site, as Church and Brunswick Streets have cars parked on both sides of the road, both day and night. I feel there has been a complete lack of consideration given to existing local conditions. The transport statement provided by the developer concludes that the development will not significantly impact upon the highway network. Unfortunately, the congestion and accident national statistics do not agree with this, as anybody living or working in Heckmondwike knows that the current highway network is at breaking point. Thank you.
Jeannie Pollard, resident in Sunnyside of Horton Street. I'm objecting to this latest housing development plan to build 74 houses in Horton Street on the main basis that all of the local schools cannot possibly cope with the extra intake numbers that 70 odd extra houses would bring. The plan would also have an extremely detrimental effect on the health and safety of local children. The two nearest local primary schools are full to capacity now and could not take the volume of children that a site like this would generate. Hempton White Grammar School has, over the last 17 years I've lived 300 metres away from its gates, expanded to the very limit of its boundaries, with 4 separate developments. The latest one, to convert the Church Hall Annex into a sixth form centre, has been ongoing for the past year, only completed last Friday. The school literally has no more room to expand for further intake, albeit 11 years after the possible completion of this unnecessary housing development. The applicant has chosen to ignore the comments from the head teachers of the closest primary and high school to the application, Holy Spirit Primary, Heckman Dwight Primary, both of which are state schools. They've both said that they would object to such a nearby housing development on the grounds mainly of not being able to take any extra pupils. Within a mile radius of the site, there are 4 further primary schools. If we extend this to 2 miles from the site to take in Springborough High School, as the applicant does, this takes the figure to 7 local high schools. So it's 7 local schools in total. One of our residents has spoken to all the head teachers of these 7 schools, and the following are their responses. Heckman White Primary has nil places and a waiting list. The head laughed at the amount he would receive from the developer, as outlined in the application, as it would be no use. He hasn't got capacity to expand, even if he wanted to, and wouldn't touch. Sorry, I'll leave that. Holy Spirit, the head teacher, gave the same reaction as above. Westmore has 2 places in each of the 2 year groups and oversubscribed in all the others. Norris thought 3 places throughout the whole school. This is unusual for them. They've had movement recently and have no extra spaces. They expect this will be the case again soon. They also couldn't expand in any way. Melbridge has got 14 places. Springborough High, waiting list of 48, no places, etc. I won't read it all. I'll go on to the conclusion and looking towards the future. If this section of land had been allowed to continue as a ringway and join up to the Greenway, rather than the local residents be held to ransom over unnecessary development, lots of the current school children could potentially get to 4 of their schools without having to go across any main roads. In particular, the children of Hempton White could pretty much have door-to-door access, road-free, to Millbridge and Holy Spirit. How wonderful that would be. I have got more, but time's up.
I won't detain you long, as I don't want to be here. Let me rephrase that. I didn't expect to be here having to explain our objections to this proposal, albeit in changed form. I wish to touch on the intangible, the future. We cannot predict what the future will bring us. All we can do is learn from the past and the present to guide us. As car usage has increased, this proposed development will increase car usage in the area. We need to find a way to make it easy for people to curtail their reliance on the car. Heckman Dwight is a notorious bottleneck already as cars travel through the centre. There is a proposal to bring back a railway system which would link Heckman Dwight to Bradford. This proposal is scheduled for 2033. If we can keep the cutting as it is now, this would be an opportunity for it to be included in this system. If it is allowed to be built on, this opportunity would be lost. 2033 is 15 years in the future. However, one of the best projects Kirklees Council approved was a rewooding of Calms Wood in Dewsbury in the 80s. This is a major asset to the town. It is a pleasure to see the change of this wood throughout the seasons. I'm sure some of the councillors who approved this scheme back in the 80s would not have seen how it had worked out, but they planned for the future. We need positive plans for generation to come by building on the pioneering heritage of the past and not just building houses where they are not needed. We need more long-term planning instead of short-term gains. As Jodie Mitchell said, you don't know what you've got till it's gone.
I am a local resident and I'm objecting on grounds of air and dust pollution. Kirklees Council set out priorities last year in their annual report, which included continued integration of a low-emission strategy into council policy and to rationalise urban traffic management to minimise pollution events. In August 2017, Hetman White was identified as having air pollution limits being breached close to people's homes, meaning there was unacceptable levels of nitrogen oxide in the area. The examiner described these areas as having common traffic jams or high volumes of slow-moving traffic being the norm. Councillor Muscan said, "We know bad air quality is detrimental to people's health. It's really positive that we've identified these areas and that we can catch other areas as early as possible. We know traffic is the main culprit. This is why the main work has been around reducing congestion." This led to Kirklees Council announcing air quality management areas at each site, claiming the decision would lead to closer monitoring and attempts made to reduce pollution in the areas. This statement is completely contrary to this type of development. Declaring such an area is a legal requirement where pollution levels have already been shown to exceed the national air quality objectives, which are the pollution limits set by government, to comply with European Union directives on air quality and health. A Hetman White councillor said, "I think any plans that reduce emissions and standing emissions at junctions like this is a good move. Not only is this development going to increase pollution in the area and have a direct detrimental impact on the health of local people, but it is going to destroy one of the few green spaces left in Hetman White." Imagine living in one of the most polluted towns in Kirklees, which is on the list of towns of having our air pollution limits regularly breached, and then having this development imposed on us with the extra traffic pollution as well as the massive increase in dust pollution that will inevitably come with the development of this site. Kirklees stated in its own report in 2017 that local authorities are expected to work towards reducing emissions and/or concentrations of PM 2.5, particular matter with an aerodynamic diameter of 2.5 or less. There is clear evidence that PM 2.5 has a significant impact on human health, including premature mortality, allergic reactions and cardiovascular diseases. Would council members support this planning objective if they lived with us in Hetman White? All the evidence is there in terms of the impact which this would have on residents' health, and to ignore this evidence would be deplorable. I urge you to consider the health of young people, the vulnerable people and the people who live and work in this area, who will be forced to suffer with the consequences of added pollution that this development will undoubtedly bring.
Brian
Thank you. So, shall I start? Yeah. I'm one of nearly 160 people who've objected to this application, and the 200 people who formed a formal group to oppose it. I'm one of 1,000 people who overlook this site. And on behalf of this group, I've got three main objections. First, the submitted indicative layout makes no attempt to create a reasonable link to the Sustrans-owned land on the east and the west of this site. This is something that was clearly included in the previous application, and question, why is it omitted from this application? And the reason seems obvious. There's simply no reasonable solution to joining these two areas together whilst developing this site in such a drastic way as proposed by this developer. The proposal also falls well short of expectations set out in the UDP, as highlighted in the Public Rights of Way response, and the Railways Path response also highlights the need to be able to maintain the current bridge on Brunswick Street. If the development happens, it would be nearly impossible to get access to the basis of this bridge. Secondly, there's a footpath that runs across the western side of the area that was mentioned earlier today, from Horton Street to Walkley Terrace. It's a well-used path for many local people, in part due to the views out to Emily Moor. With the proposed development, this path would now look directly down into people's houses and into the bedrooms of those houses. Not only would it be invasive to people living there, it would also be dangerous. The steep drop down this gabion wall would be potentially fatal to humans and dogs alike. And the risk to local children is clearly a concern. Finally, and this issue of green space, and I know this has been touched upon before, this is the last hope to make a sensible joined-up green corridor for people and animals to use between the two sides of this space. Not only would this be useful for the health and leisure purposes and decrease antisocial behaviour, but it could also support 1,000 trees, enough to absorb 30 tonnes of CO2 and other pollutants a year. And although this is a designated brownfield site, it's by no means brown or derelict, unlike the disused car park in Hetmanwyke, which I understand is on the agenda for consideration by you later today. The two areas of land could not be more different. We would like to make our community one that we can be proud of, an oasis of calm in a busy, polluted world. Once it's destroyed by this development, we cannot get it back. Hetmanwyke is already heavily polluted. We know pollution causes illnesses in old and young alike. Let's not destroy this valuable green space. Finally, one last point. Most towns in our country would give their eye teeth to have a green corridor like this site in the heart of a busy and polluted town. Yet our planning office seems intent on giving it up rather than protecting it. And I would urge you to reject this application. Thank you.
We have a Gordon North. Thank you.
Thank you. I did a bit of a handout for councillors to see. I think the thing is that Spen Valley Greenway was first mooted 20 years since and was built very, very quickly. Highway officers objected to it strenuously because nobody cycles in the Spen Valley. Well, after we created Spen Valley Greenway, thousands of people cycle in the Spen Valley. It's received accolades nationally, locally and internationally. The idea of the ringway was to connect at both ends in the Spen Valley, going from Cleckheaton and joining again on Dewsbury Moor. And there's a design, a full design done by Sustrans in 2002. And since then, various parts of it have been constructed, and it's been a case of trying to join the dots. So virtually the whole of the southern section is complete now, apart from the section that is under consideration for housing today. I'm not going to speak about housing because everybody and the mothers has done that. That's no problem. What I am saying is that the parts of the Greenway, if you look at the back page of what I did, there's a wonderful development there which is about 300 yards away from the proposed site, which shows a similar size housing allocation with the Greenway running between it. There's high-rise buildings as well as, sort of 4- and 5-storey buildings, as well as low ones as well. It's not in a deep corridor. It's a nice place to cycle through. It's wonderful for children learning to ride and elderly people walking to the doctors and whatever else. And on the other side is how it was done in the old station in Hetmanwyke. And you, in effect, come out of a mole hole at one end of it, and you go a zigzag through the rat rung, dodging delivery vehicles and whatever else that there is there, because you're on tarmac. And then eventually, when you get to within sight of High Street, you dart between some bins, and then you go down another mole hole to get to the other end. The difference between these two is that this was a detailed design study which came to committee with all matters considered and commented on and altered in accordance with requirements. And this one was delegated. It was an outline application, it was delegated, and that's what we've ended up with, something that's totally unsuitable. So, to my mind, you shouldn't be considering an outline application for something that's so important for the Spen Valley. This route, I can't emphasise how important it is. The other point, right, very slightly,
right, is that on this, you can see between the brown arrows, the site, and between the green arrows, which will be the only uncompleted part of it. And to my mind, a Section 106 agreement should be attached to this, if it ever is approved, to develop the last little bit of it, because all the infrastructure's there, the heart course down there and everything. Okay then, thank you very much for your time.
We have Howard B.
Thank you. Chair and Committee, I am a local resident who drives on these roads regularly. I had hoped to address you today to object to this application on road safety grounds, bringing evidence to support my contention that the traffic statement was misleading in material matters and that the Planning Officer's report ignored the conclusions of your own Highways Officer's response dated the 26th of September, being this application provides insufficient information to allow proper highway assessment. This response makes no mention of whether local roads can cope with either the site traffic or the added residential traffic. The planner prefers to state that highways have no objections subject to planning conditions. Those conditions appear to have come from an email written prior to the highways response dated the 23rd of July from Design and Development Structures at Kirklees Council. I am now led to believe that the planning officer has provided an update to you as members, indicating that Highways officially removed their objections on the 14th of November. This has not yet been put in the public domain. No one has been able to see what it actually says, and we can't see how the Highways objections have been overcome. The planning officer describes the road network in the vicinity of the site as being capable of allowing heavy vehicles to access the site, such vehicles being kept on site for the duration of the cut and fill works. Who says the roads are capable? And what about the original railway bridges and their capacity to bear heavy loads of plant and machinery? Despite describing the use of gabion baskets to retain the sides of the cutting, the fleet of heavy vehicles required to transport them has been ignored. You have a copy of the Highways response to the previous application for this land, which was rejected in February. Phase 2 of that report considered residential traffic. I urge you to read it. What has changed? Your public document pack for this meeting bears the following caption: Kirklees Council advocates openness and transparency as part of its democratic processes. I fail to see how this has been either open, transparent or democratic. It smacks of decisions behind closed doors hidden from public scrutiny. Bringing this to your notice has taken the time I would have preferred to present evidence to demonstrate this development is unsuitable on road safety grounds. The Highways Officer's report has been apparently superseded, although this is not in the public domain. We cannot understand how Highways objections have been overcome. The transport statement is misleading. Therefore, I urge you to defer pending a full review of the new Highways information, which was submitted only 2 days before the report to committee was written, and to allow time for the Council Highways Officer's report to be made available, considered and understood. Thank you.
Thanks, Howard. Alison Osby.
Hello, I'm a resident of Hetmond-Wyke and I've lived in Hetmond-Wyke and Dewsbury Moor area most of my life. I want to speak today about noise and the effect of noise on neighbouring residents. It is proposed that the construction on site will take place between Monday to Friday, 7:30 to 18:30, and on a Saturday, 8 o'clock till 1 o'clock. How has the impact of building noise been risk assessed? I can see no evidence of this in addressing the concerns of public objections. I can see no evidence of this in the noise assessment provided by the developers. This only addresses the noise impacts for the residents of the new proposed dwellings, a noise impact caused by the proposed new residential area once it's built. Interestingly, the noise report states that planning policies and decisions should aim to avoid giving rise to significant adverse impacts on health and quality of life as a result of a development. It also identifies to protect areas of tranquility and mitigate and minimise adverse effects on health and quality of life. It also states that daytime resting noise in bedrooms should be no higher than 35 decibels. Bearing this in mind, how has this been addressed for in particular nighttime workers living adjacent to the proposed building site? Workers trying to sleep 6 days out of 7 next to a major development involving, and I quote, a significant cut and fill for weeds, involving the noise of heavy vehicles excavating soil, which recognises neighbouring residents being detrimentally affected, but only then describes noise generated by a typical building site. I object that a site requiring significant cut and fill on this site is a typical building site involving major changes to the existing landscape. Night workers living nearby to this, God help them, basically. I know of 2 men residing in Horton Street who are absolutely dreading this. One's the site manager of Sir Genter in Huddersfield, Peter. His neighbour 2 doors down is the service manager there on site also. Peter is responsible for the running of the factory out of hours. His colleague, all the services, water, gas and steam. Their roles are regularly involved in incident control, it's not accident, incident control, and managing and making correct decisions. Resting adequate sleep to fully function is essential. There's a train driver who lives in Walkley Terrace. There's a night health care worker on Walkley Terrace who works nights. And there's a student nurse and a partner also works nights. Sleep deprivation, as I'm sure you're aware, majorly impacts on health and mental health. So I'm just wondering how these people are going to sleep during this for weeks and months. Just to recap, I think the public objection about noise has not been addressed. Noise report doesn't support this, and I'm concerned about the quality of life, health, being and well-being, particularly on night workers living in that area, and therefore I urge you to refuse the application on these grounds.
Councillor Viv Kendrick.
Colleagues will be very pleased to know that if I'm speaking, we're coming to the end of this, so I expect loud hoorays. Hetman White's one of the smallest wards in Kirklees, and you know we have the largest amount of new homes bonus, and that's because we've had the largest amount of building in Kirklees. I spoke at the strategy committee when this application came before, and at the time I pointed out that the site is surrounded by residents' homes, some very near the boundary, and as it says in the report, some abut the application site. And I would take issue perhaps about the implication that on the west and to the south it's mostly commercial businesses, because a lot of those commercial sites have been converted into apartments and flats, including some of the mill buildings there. In those houses surrounding this site, there are families with children, babies, some retired, some with vulnerabilities, shift workers, as somebody's talked about, and so on. Those homes and houses are still there. Those residents still there, live there. And one of the key issues for me is, should those residents have to put up with and deal with the negative impacts while construction is taking place? And I agree absolutely with Councillor David Sheard, who put in an objection talking about the intolerable nuisance that would cause. The noise of heavy plant and pollution arising from what the report describes as something requiring extensive site engineering to use gabion walls to retain the eastern and western side of the cutting and erecting the required platform to build on would have a major impact on residents living in properties surrounding this site. And I see from the report that heavy plant machinery would remain on site whilst work's being carried out, but I haven't seen anything, and I think someone did mention it before, about where the transport of materials for the gabion walls has been addressed. And these are on B roads. These are little roads. I have to say, I noticed the traffic survey about traffic queues, and it would add one car to the queue. I don't know if it measured how long the queue was there, because hell would freeze over before I would go down one of those roads to try to get out onto Walkley Lane, because I haven't got enough life left at my age to wait about like that. It is an extremely congested area, and it may not be a huge number of cars, but the wait is long, long, long. And I'm glad that a refuse, and I have 5 minutes, Chair. I thought that you weren't buzzing me. Okay. I note that there's room for a refuse lorry to go through there, and I'm really glad about that. But actually, perhaps someone would like to help me address the complaints I get when their bins are emptied, because the refuse lorry cannot get through those streets at times because of the parked cars there. You know, and this just appears to be an exacerbation of that same thing. But I would also ask the committee to consider the West Yorkshire Combined Authority report that came to Cabinet last week, Planning for Growth, the Leeds City Region Connectivity Strategy, and that's about planning for the future. I think one speaker did mention it. And one of the key actions in it is addressing the poor public transport provision in areas particularly from within North Kirklees, where there is no rail connectivity connecting to Leeds and Bradford. This is a report that came to Cabinet, and we were happy to receive it and agreed it, noted it as such. And one of the things it's looking at is a line of connectivity, Heckman White, Cleckheaton, Bradford, Leeds, actually, funny enough, that mirrors the Spen Valley Greenway, which I don't think colleagues in this chamber would want us to lose. One of the ways round it would certainly be you could connect up the bits of Spen Valley Greenway using this cutting if you needed to, so we still have that walking, cycling route. And I think whilst that's quite a way in the future, and I possibly won't be around to worry about it, I do think we are closing the door on that possibility with this planning application. And I would ask members if they would consider very strongly deferring this application while they look into some of the other issues, including the lack of agreement about flood and drainage. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, no. Good afternoon, Chair and members of the Planning Committee. My name is Alistair Flatman and I act as the planning consultant for the applicant. I do not propose saying too much this afternoon, given your officer's positive recommendation. However, it is clear that there are a number of concerns raised by residents, and as such I would like to reiterate a few key points. Following refusal of the previous scheme, we have worked very closely with your officers to deliver an application that addresses all the relevant planning matters. The outline application before you simply seeks to secure principle and a means of access. Given that the Council do not currently have a deliverable supply of housing, the presumption is in favour of development unless there is any significant or demonstrable harm that outweighs those benefits. In this case, there is no such harm. The site is in a sustainable location and will deliver housing together with a full suite of contributions for affordable housing, education and POS. In addition, the scheme will bring a derelict, privately owned site back into use and deliver the desired cycle link to join up existing routes. Reference has been made to ecology, highways and drainage, but your officer report confirms there are no objections on these matters. The site is not of ecological value, and the development will not give rise to any highway safety or capacity issues. In terms of creating the necessary development platforms, this will be achieved by an on-site cut and fill exercise. There is no need to import material to fill the cutting, and this is therefore a significant change from the previous application that was refused earlier this year. In summary then, this is a sustainable site that will deliver housing at a time where the Council do not have a 5-year supply. It will deliver affordable housing, an education contribution and public open space, together with the desired cycle link. There are no outstanding objections from consultees or your officers, and therefore no planning grounds on which to refuse the application. We have worked closely with your officers and addressed all previous reasons for refusal. Just picking up a couple of the points raised by objectors regarding air quality and noise, I do note conditions in the officer's report regarding electric vehicle charging and the construction management plan, which would hopefully address those points. As such, there is no significant or demonstrable harm to outweigh the benefits of delivering housing on this private, sustainably located site. I therefore respectfully request you support officer recommendation and move to grant outline planning permission. Thank you for your time.
Over to you. Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. I think that this site has a number of issues about developing it, which we would be, as a committee, we would be foolish to ignore. Just because something can be engineered doesn't mean to say you should do it. And it does strike me that choosing a site like this, quite apart from any other considerations, it's really quite difficult to develop. I don't know what the costs are likely to be, but it strikes me that they would be considerable, just to prepare the site for development, when you could, well, find a piece of flat land somewhere. I mean, there is another site in Heckman Wyke, as somebody's mentioned, which is on the agenda. But I'll throw my hat into the ring straight away. I think we should refuse this. Let's start with the policy issues. There are policy objections in the UDP. It is not a housing site. I can't remember exactly what it was designated as, but an urban greenway of sorts. But the other, perhaps more significant in the long term, is that a site here was put forward as a housing site when the discussions relating to the new local plan were going on, and this site was rejected. I'm not quite clear what status that has, but it does seem to me that is significant. And once again, it is not a designated housing site in the local plan. And the inspector, having gone through all the sites and all the policies, did not choose to overturn that. So I'm not quite sure how one expresses that, but I would like to propose we refuse it. We'll work out exactly what the policy grounds are, but it does seem to me that, quite apart from all the issues that have been mentioned by local residents, and I take on board what they're saying about Heckman Wyke being congested, and the fact that this would add to it, and the fact that you need the green spaces that are there. I'll stick to the policy issues for the moment, and put refusal forward on that basis.
Chair, before I start any comments, could I, bearing in mind that most of the objections, not most, but a lot of the objections is about highways, could we not have some feedback from our highways officer in relation to some of the comments that have been made, please?
Yes, through you, Chair. I think we accept that there will be an impact from this development. There's bound to be. One vehicle would result in an impact, but from a highways officer's point of view, it's about the scale of that impact. Now, we've got a generation here of 33 outbound trips in the AM peak. Now that's one vehicle every 2 minutes, so that's the scale of it. Now that then distributes between 3 possible exit points based on a journey to work analysis. The applicant has put forward that 47% will exit via Church Lane. That's one vehicle every 4 minutes. 20% via Church Street onto Walkley Lane. That's one vehicle every 8 minutes. And 33% via Brunswick Street onto Walkley Lane. That's one vehicle every 5 minutes. So we do accept that there will be an impact, but we have to weigh up the scale of that impact. And on that basis, our conclusion is that the impact will not be significant. It's a measure of vehicle numbers, really.
Thank you, Peter. Can I just say before we start, I think sometimes we can be, as I said earlier about that, the inspector's report, I think this is subjective, and obviously the last time when this came, we looked at all the information that was given to us and we didn't accept it. To me, it seems a little bit unfair now to say, well, go back and work with officers and come back and see whether there's something that can be done with this site. Because at the end of the day, it is a windfall site. And I don't know, I don't want to be offensive, Councillor Pinnock, but it says in there's no conflict with policy. I don't know whether there's an issue there that you've got that officers can't find. But it actually says in there's no conflict. What I do agree with is Councillor Kendrick, and that the fact is that there's a lot of imponderables here that hasn't been answered. And one of them is, fair enough, we've been asked to actually, this is an outline planning permission, all other matters are reserved. And bearing in mind what our highways officer has just said, you don't really know what the effect is going to be because you don't know the design as yet. With the design of the access, you know where the access is going to be, but on site you don't actually know how many properties are going to be there and what we can accommodate. So we can quite legitimately defer this and ask for further information, which is what the local councillor actually asked for, Councillor Kendrick. And I think that's more in keeping with just outright refusal, because I think, as I say, you send the wrong messages to some of these developers when we're actually asking them to come back, have a rethink. The other thing really is that I've said this on numerous occasions. I don't agree, Peter, with the number of traffic movements. I think the traffic movements is, and I know you've worked them out and whatever. I just think that, to be quite honest with you, they underestimate rather than overestimate, and I think some of the issues there can be picked up and re-looked at again, because something of this sort of size will accommodate quite a few properties, and the traffic movements at peak hours are going to be horrendous. Anybody, I think I live locally to Dewsbury, and anybody, I wouldn't go through Epsom Wyke on a morning or afternoon for anything at all. So whatever happens there, and it's got to have an effect, and that is one thing that I agree with the officers. I think it does boil down to various things, and one of them is air quality, one of them is the ecology, and the other, as well as the possible effect on the schools. But all these can be accommodated, and all these can be actually dealt with under a proper reserve matters application. But as I say, I'm quite willing to move a deferral on this, Chair, because I think there's so many things that need to be sorted out. And I think that's only being fair to the applicant, but also being fair to the objectors, because they raised quite a few issues as well. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, just to stick to one point, my main concerns are about the long-term sustainability of traffic in the area. I think if we accept this as it is at the moment, we run the risk of preventing in the longer term both potential development of the route for cycling and walking, the Greenway approach, but also I think this interesting idea of developing a rail link into Bradford and from there into Leeds. I think that is something that is very sadly lacking. I think in the long term, if we do not develop public transport alternatives in North Kirklees and the rest of the Kirklees as well, we're going to have this long-term problem of congestion and the related problem of air quality. I think the points raised by Councillor Kendrick in relation to the recent Wicker reports that have come through are really important, and we need to consider them when we're making our decision. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of things. First of all, I just want to reference something that Councillor Bolt had in his email, which was about cycle routes, etc. And there was a launch in Parliament last week of Susten's new guidance, Pass for Everyone, and apparently he's had confirmation from their chief exec that routes that do not have key quality elements will not be added to the national cycle work, which could cause some problems. The other thing I wanted to actually bring up is bridle networks have been mentioned as well. And is any of this part of bridle path or bridle networks? Because I've been looking through the papers and can't find any reference to bridle ways and that sort of thing. So if somebody could answer me something on bridle networks.
Thank you, Chair. Oh, well, I've listened very intently this morning to all the people who have put their tenpenny, as one might say, and I feel that they've all been singing from the same hymn book. In other words, they're all telling us what we, if we didn't know, we do know now. And I have to say they've done a good job. Because at the end of the day, you know, on the site visit this morning, I found it was even busy then, getting the bus round on that site visit this morning. Goodness knows what it would be like with all those properties built and the extra vehicles. I have to say, with our highways people, it is a formula they work from, and I think it's a bit of an underestimated formula, actually. The movements obviously will be a hell of a lot more than that if this job came to fruition. And I do sympathise with all those people. And I have to say, I've listened to them all this morning, and even though I don't live in Eckmondwike, I feel as though I know it fairly well now. You know. But the thing is, we have to, something has to be done. Whether our officers have gone back and done as much as they should do is a matter of conjecture. So my whole job with this is, yes, I would accept deferral, but only if we can come back with something that's going to suit everybody. Because after all, we're here to represent the people, and the people are here now telling us what to do, and at the end of the day, who can go against everybody? You know, it's as simple as that. We've got to sit down and find a way through that suits everybody, if that is possible. Thank you very much.
Just while I remember, just want to bring one point up. I think it was Brian who brought it up, and it was about works to bridge. It was works to two bridges, one on Worthy Lane and one at Brunswick Street. That's something that hasn't been mentioned before. Peter, have you got anything to add regarding highways? You can mention bridges if you want. It's not a bridge too far. Right. Matthias, have you got? Not on bridges.
I mean, structures are looked after by the council. The council has a strategy for looking after those types of issues. I don't think that's germane to the issue, if I'm honest. I have got some comments to make, but is now okay, or have you?
Yeah. At the moment, there's three separate things that we could
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I've listened obviously very intently to the representations and everything members have said. I think there's a lot flying around. If we go back in time to start from where Councillor Pinnock raised the issue about the sifting out of the site allocations and why it was rejected. It was rejected because it was proposed to access from Walkley Terrace, and this application doesn't do that. It accesses from Horton Terrace, so it is fundamentally different. It is previously developed land. It is valued locally in the community as a visual amenity, but it is previously developed. It is private land. You do have a requirement in your 5-year housing land supply, even after your plan is adopted, to deliver 450 homes a year on windfall sites. That's almost a quarter. That's over a quarter of your build every year. So there is a need to build on these types of sites. There is also obviously the issues around construction, air quality. Those matters. It isn't in an air quality action zone, but Heckman White does have an air quality issue. Developments of this type bring forward opportunities to promote electric charging vehicles, travel planning. Those are the methods that the council can employ to improve air quality. So there is, through development, benefits to those elements of health and well-being. On the cycle route, there's nothing wrong with you saying we want to ensure that a segregated cycle route is delivered at reserved matters. A planning condition could give you that comfort, but you're not being asked to consider that today. You are solely being asked to consider, is it acceptable to put residential on that site from that point of access on Horton? Everything else is reserved. The numbers of houses is based on the transport assessment is based on up to 74 dwellings. If you're saying to us you've got concerns of any more, but you're satisfied that that transport assessment's okay, then you can put a cap on that says there shall be no more than 74 dwellings at reserved matters. I have to be honest, I don't think there is anything in front of you that you cannot address through a planning condition, through the delegation to officers, that you can't then say, at reserved matters, bring this back to this committee so that we can ensure that the design, the layout is dealt with. We deal with hillside sites all the time in Kirklees. This is no more challenging than ones in Councillor Firth's ward, in Councillor Walker and Bellamy's ward. I don't think there is anything unusual about developing this site, but it is clearly valuable locally, and it's not an easy decision for the planning committee on that basis. I fully respect that, but as an officer, I think I have to advise you, if you want us to defer it, what exactly, apart from what we know, do you want us to do? And we'll put it to the applicant and come back, but I'm not sure there's much new information is all I'm just trying to get to.
Right. You say, Matthijs, that you could build in conditions if you develop this site which would meet all the objections. But what about the development of a railway link? Would that be possible? I suppose potentially you could build a tunnel right underneath this, but I think that's unlikely. I think this might be a significant blockage to that kind of development. Don't know what your response is to that.
Yeah. The reality is that piece of information is very new. Think about the delivery of railways and railway networks. Can you attach significant weight to that against the planning policy and the other material considerations before you? I do not think you can. It's your choice, but that's my advice to you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I appear to be being a bit of a lone voice here, but addressing the question of why are we deferring this, if we do, it does seem to me there are a number of issues, including the one that Councillor Walker has just mentioned, about removing the potential for using this alignment for a new railway. I just think that if we're deferring it, we need to have reasons to discuss with the developer as to how this can be made more acceptable. And the question of providing, to take another point about having a cycle route, the point was made by Mr. Berry about shared use of a road and a cycle route. It doesn't work. So that takes a bit more land out of the site from developing it. I just feel there are things here which are not capable of being sorted, probably in the long term, but I think, as one or two of the objectors have mentioned, we need to look at the long term and try and work out what all proposals, all likely proposals for future development of transport in the area, how they can happen. And to get a railway line through Hetmondwike, you would need sites like this, if that is a realistic proposal, which, as a Cleckheaton member, I do hope is a realistic proposal. So I will stick with what I've said. If nobody seconds it, then so be it.
Can I think sometimes, Matthias, you say things and I don't think you realise what you're saying, to be quite honest with you, because you said this, it is a 12th hour thing, is the railway issue. Yeah, it's a new issue, and I have no problem, but that works the reverse as well, in the fact that you need to look into it a little bit further, see whether, and if you're going down refusal path, and for that specific reason, this is not cast in stone that this is going to happen. There's a report that's been done only last Friday, I believe, or whatever, that was submitted. So, you know, it's a proposal, but it's not a fixed policy or whatever. And I don't understand that. I don't, you know, either we can defer it. I think we can defer it over that particular issue to get further information anyway. But that's literally further down the line, I was just going to say then. I apologise. But the other thing is that we, to a certain extent, it's very, very rare that you get, I believe there were 13 speakers, but 13 speakers come to a meeting. So the feeling is very emotional, and there's many a time when we've made decisions here, and you know, it's an emotive decision. But every one of them has a particular issue. Now, we need to look at them issues as well as what's been brought to us. And, you know, I took one on board about the schools, and somebody had gone out of the way to actually look at what the intake of the schools were and say, no, they're all full. Whether that's correct or not, I honestly don't know. But the application itself has got to be looked at, because there's other things that they want accommodating on that design. Now, I would say that we ask the developer to go away and have a public meeting with these people, 13 and more, to actually look at the design and see if whether they can come up with something that these people can accept. And I honestly think that's the only fair thing we can do. Because at the end of the day, it says in there, and I'll repeat what was said by the officer, there is no conflict with policy. If he takes this to the inspector will likely to fall down on their behalf, and this will go through anyway. So then people that are objecting won't have any say at all. So that's unfair. I think it really is unfair. I think we defer it, tell the developers to speak to these people, try to get a design that's good, and come back with the outline application and see what the reserve matters, and that may answer some of the effects on the highways as well. So I think if you were going to defer it, I would defer it for that particular reason.
Can I just? I'm thinking from the developer's point of view, who's listening to this debate. so that that person knows what they're expected or being asked to go away and do. So you're saying you'd like the developer to hold a public meeting to speak to objectors, but and local members, but also to inform that public debate, that public meeting, to come up with more specific information in relation to matters that might be part of the reserve matters like layout and scale and design, those kind of things, so you might be able to more easily assess the traffic impacts. Is that what you want? But you're not... No. Well, you did, but I'm just trying to condense it so that and clarify it.
Thank you. Listening to what everybody's had to say, I do agree with what Paul's had to say. It is up to the people for them to have their say. It's time, we as a council and councillors started listening to the people we represent. There's such a lot of plans being passed over time that have gone pear-shaped because nobody listens. They don't listen to local ward councillors or even the local people. We've had 13 people here stood up today, all telling the same different stories, but all with the same theme, that it's wrong to go ahead and do all this without having some form of meeting and deciding what they want to do. They live there, we don't. And this is the whole situation. So whatever Matthias says, he's only talking from the point of view of the book. He's coming as a planning officer. Well, I'm not a planning officer, I'm just sitting on a planning committee. But I understand those people over there, because I represent people exactly like them. And we've got to start listening and taking more notice. And I agree with Paul, they need to get a meeting together and sort something out. Let them have their say, what they want. Not what the council wants or what we want, what they want. Thank you.
Andrew, there's only you so far that wants it refusing. You've moved it, there's no second, are you?
I accept that. I'll withdraw that, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
It's been... I'll just go round you all again, then I want to start and try and bring it together somehow. Anybody else? Rob?
Again, coming back to this same issue about transport, and particularly about the potential rail link-up. And yes, we are looking in the longer term, but we're dealing with some very, very intractable problems about traffic congestion and air quality. And I think if a public meeting was to take place, I think there would have to be representation, if possible, from somebody with some expertise to talk through the possibilities for both the cycling, but more importantly in the longer term, the potential for some type of rail link-up. Because I think that is a really critical issue for the longer term.
Donna?
Just to add, when it comes back, can I have some more? Because thank you to Councillor Kendrick. I now know which bit is the bridle way, but obviously it just seems to end and don't link up to anything. Right, if it goes in, so can I just, when it comes back, can I just have some more detail brought back from that as well?
Right. As we've gone along, I've taken notes. There's been a lot of things that have been covered that people have brought up, such as air quality, noise, dust, highways, accidents, what will happen with cut and fill, work strip bridges, because that's damned important. There's been a point brought up by Gordon earlier on about a point going back to 2002 about the ringway being linked up with the greenway. Both colleagues, Viv and Dave, have both asked for the same thing for deferral. With what's being said here today, moved by Councillor Kane, seconded by Councillor Firth about deferral, I think the right move, in right direction is for that public meeting to take place, really. So, to clear things up, it has been moved for deferral. Councillor Kane, seconded by Councillor Firth. We got a list of points that we can defer on that's sufficient at this point in time.
Yeah, I think it's clear what the applicant will be clear about what he's got to provide further information on, including having a public meeting, if that's what he is able and willing to do.
Those in favour of deferral, please show. That's 6 against 1. Sorry, Andrew. So that application has been deferred. Right, colleagues, if we can crack on, due to some people taking a lot longer than the 3 minutes, we really are running a lot fair way behind time. And we've got to be out of here apparently for 4:30. Something else is happening. What that summit is, I've no idea. So we'll move on to page number 43 now, and this is, we're stopping in Hetmond and we're at Westgate, and this is Glenn again.
Thank you, Chair. It's me again, Glenn Wakefield, case officer dealing with this application. I'd just like to draw members' attention to the update regarding issues that have arisen since the publication of the committee report. Unfortunately, there was an error in the committee report regarding the number of representations reported. That's been corrected in the update. Further comments from the lead local flood authority have been received, and proposed amendments to the second reason for refusal. There's also been a request from the applicant to defer the application, and the reasons have been summarised in the update. Members will recall from their site visit this morning that the application site is located about half a kilometre from the centre of Heckmond-like. It's within a setting which is a combination of high-density housing and commercial operations. The size of the site is approximately 1.6 hectares. The site was previously used as a car parking area for Flush Mills, which is on the other side of Westgate here. We parked up initially in this former access just here while we were viewing the site. The nearest residential properties are Boundary Street, which runs off Westgate, as you can see here. These properties immediately adjacent to the boundary of the site are prefabricated bungalows, and then on the other side of the road are terraced two-storey properties. The applicant proposes to the applicant seeks outline planning permission for 2 retail units, which are here, and a drive-through restaurant, which will be located there, and the associated infrastructure, i.e. site access, car parking arrangements, etc. Whilst a full assessment of the relevant issues has been set out in the committee report, I will just briefly go through the key elements. The site is unallocated in the unitary development plan, but is identified as a housing allocation in the local plan. There are no unresolved objections to the housing allocation. No representations were received with regard to the site at the publication stage of the local plan, and the inspector at the local planning examination hearing sessions did not raise any specific issue with regard to the allocation. The preparation of the Council's emerging local plan has reached an advanced stage with an anticipated adoption of the plan early next year. Consequently, it's considered that it must be given significant weight in the consideration of planning applications. The proposal does not seek to secure detailed designs for the buildings on site. This will be achieved via a subsequent reserved matters application. Having said this, the applicant seeks full approval for the layout. The retail units would be located on the east of the site, as I pointed out here. There would be an adequate separation from residential properties on the other side of the site over here. The proposed drive-through restaurant would be in the north-western corner here. It's considered that, whilst we haven't got detailed designs, the likely size of these buildings will be such that there wouldn't be any significant issue with overshadowing as a result of the layout. However, officers considered that the layout has the potential to cause nuisance to the occupiers of these residential units here as a result of disturbance caused by the car parking arrangements which we have here and immediately adjoin the back gardens of these properties, which are at a slightly lower level, and the access arrangements for the drive-through, which, as you can see, you would come in here, drive in, pick up your takeaway and then head off. So we do have concerns about that issue. The applicant has produced a noise assessment in support of the application. However, officers consider that that assessment doesn't fully consider the full range of noise likely to result from this operation, and as a consequence, noise nuisance is likely to be a potential problem. The applicant has provided a sequential test as the site is outside Heckman Dwight Town Centre. This analysis looks at how this site would impact on local centres in the vicinity. Officers conclude, however, that the starting point for this assessment has not been justified by the applicant and has failed to demonstrate that an accurate sequential test analysis has therefore been carried out. The site is semi-derelict, as members will recall. However, it does provide the potential for habitat opportunities for wildlife. The applicant has provided an ecological assessment to support the application and a tree survey. However, again, officers don't consider that what has been submitted does accurately assess the potential impacts on ecology on the site. It's considered that there's likely to be a net loss to biodiversity as a result. The site falls within flood zone 1, 2 and 3, so it's the full Monty on this site. Therefore, there is a raised level of flood risk associated with parts of the site, particularly down to the south, which is obviously further or closer to the river. There has been a supporting flood risk. Anyways, it's considered that adequate sight lines can be provided at the junction here, where it's proposed to take access, and that the parking arrangements would be sufficient for this type of operation. However, it's considered that insufficient information has been provided to fully assess the impact that the development would have on the surrounding highway network. 18 representations have been received in connection with the proposal, and the issues raised have been addressed in the committee report. It's recommended that in this instance committee refuse planning permission for the reasons set out in the committee report. Thank you, Chair.
We have one speaker, and that's Nick Willock, who's the angel.
Well, if that's how well housing developments go down in Hetman, why can't I rest my case? Members, our complaint today is that due process on the planning matters in this case has not been properly concluded. Our application is being rushed to committee after only 12 weeks, and yet we feel there are strong and important planning considerations to weigh in the balance against the recommendation that the application should be refused, simply because the land is intended for housing in the next local plan. The UDP remains the statutory development plan for the borough, and the land as it stands now is unallocated and therefore suitable for alternative development in principle. The other reasons for refusal relate to development control issues that are resolvable. For highways, the official consultation response doesn't conclude the development is unacceptable. Officers have simply questioned some aspects of the transport assessment and have requested further information. Second, all major retail applications in recent years have been sent to external consultants for assessment because of the complexities surrounding sequential and impact matters, including the other retail application on the agenda today at Birstall. Here you go, appraisal of retail planning issues by White Young Green. There is no reason to treat our application any differently, and there is currently no objective evidence for the Council to counteract the submitted work. It cannot therefore be concluded that the proposals will be detrimental to the town centre. The update report states that negotiations could go on after an appeal is submitted. However, the appeal process does not permit this. The Planning Inspectorate guidance says that ongoing discussions between the applicant and the LPA should ensure that the applicant has the opportunity to respond to any issues or concerns before the LPA makes its decision. For flood risk, the reason for refusal states the applicant has not addressed the issue of flooding, and yet the Environment Agency and Yorkshire Water raised no objections to the scheme. The Council's drainage officer has simply asked for further information about the culvert. Members, case law has determined that planning decisions must be made fairly and with an open mind. Detailed aspects of planning applications can't simply be disregarded just because the Council is focused on the land allocation matter. We therefore request the application is deferred to allow sufficient time for negotiations to properly and fairly conclude. This needs approximately 8 to 12 weeks, providing there is mutual cooperation in these matters and that the Council's external retail consultants are engaged immediately. Thank you.
It's over to you. It's all gone quiet everywhere.
Right, I will stick my head in the noose again, and I think there are grounds for deferring this. It's one of these cases where I am quite surprised how quickly this has come to committee compared with some of the large applications that we have to deal with. But of course, what I don't know is what kind of discussions have gone on, what was the actual substance of those discussions. We've, in a sense, only got the applicant's word for this, for the way they've interpreted the outcome. Of course, the outcome is an item on an agenda with 6 reasons for refusing it. Whilst I acknowledge the fact that it's a site allocated for housing in the new local plan, and whilst I acknowledge the fact that in the design, presumably for illustration, there are some issues about the nuisance likely to be caused. I think in this case we need to work out whether anything can be done about those. The danger, as always, with refusing something is that that's kind of shuts the door. The only recourse the applicant then have is to go to appeal. And it does seem to me, I think, a bit more time needs to elapse to make sure that we really can't go any further and need to recommend refusal.
I tend to agree with Councillor Pinnock, to be quite honest with you. And the fact is that it has come quite quickly, and bear in mind, I'm always complaining that they're not coming quick enough. It is quite strange that it's made its way here very quickly. I think when you look at the reasons for refusal, there's the first and the last, 1 and 6, is definitely something that we need to actually have a look at, and you know, whether there is some issues there. 2, 3, 4 and 5 is extremely subjective, and I think that you know, it's one of them issues. Are we sort of over-egging this? Because I think at times, sometimes if we continued like this, we'd have no development at all. And I think we need to just try to address them. It's not a criticism, Glenn. It's really, I think we need to go into just a little bit further details, because every one of them says detrimental impact, and that is a subjective nature. If you're going to tell us what the truly detrimental impact is, and what direct effect. The housing allocation is a different thing altogether. You know, I would much prefer this to be housing, but if there's an opportunity for the development, it's development. And then I as one that's driven through Etmanwyke once when it was flooded, and nearly sort of jiggered my car, I think there is a problem there, to be quite honest with you. And they don't call it flush for now, do they? It's, I think there is a problem lower down, as you said, southwards, and I think that needs to be addressed. And I don't know what the flood alleviation projects are for it to be remediated. So I don't know. I think I would tend to support Councillor Pinnock in deferring this.
Can I was just going to ask if you were talking about seeking what information will the applicant need to provide if we're going to defer it? I'm looking at the reasons for refusal: 3, 4, 5 and 6, failure to demonstrate certain elements. Is that what you're asking? So the applicant's being asked to demonstrate these elements which are he's failed to demonstrate in 3, 4, 5 and 6. I'm just asking so the applicant knows what he's got to go away and do.
I mean, yes, I will support the move for it to be deferred. There are a bit of swings and roundabouts between this development and whether or not it should be housing, but we're not really actually deciding this at the moment. I think, just like the last case, where we gave the residents and the objectors the opportunity to have greater discussion and more transparency, I think possibly in this case as well, the developer needs to feel that they have been listened to.
I think if we just look at items 3 to 6, we missed item 2, which is about the layout of the site. Because I think when we were on site, mention wasn't made about where things were going to be located and how that would affect the impact on the residents living alongside the site. So I don't think you could actually look at some of these other things without actually looking at the layout of the site, which is point 2. So I think that should be included.
Through you, Chair, can I just add something to the debate? I think the key issue here is the allocation, or the up-and-coming allocation of the site as part of the local plan. Most of the other issues, as Nick alluded to, are issues that could be resolved through further negotiation, the submission of further information. The issue is, would that be abortive on the basis that there is a principle here that this site has been identified for housing? You know, we have a shortage of housing. We don't meet our housing requirement at the moment. If you lose this site for housing, then that just is a chip off the potential sites that we have in Kirklees. So it all boils down to that issue of principle. Yes, the other issues, there's a reasonable chance that you could resolve those by getting that further information from the applicant. But should we be doing that at this stage if, on principle, the application, in the view of officers, should be refused? Thank you, Chair.
Yes, I'm sorry, Chair. I forgot to make a proposal when I was speaking. Notwithstanding what Mr Wakefield has just said, I think I would like to propose we defer it, even if we come to the same conclusion at the end of further negotiations. And I don't know whether we want to put a time limit on that. It is at least given the opportunity to do it, and as Councillor Patterson has said, to involve the local residents if at all possible.
Sorry, Chair, I don't think we need to be frightened of this, the reason for refusal about the housing allocation, because you've addressed it in some way. You've addressed the fact that it is a departure. You know, in actually giving the reasons why we could refuse it, you've also given the reasons why we could possibly accept it as well, as is the nature. It swings and roundabouts. So I don't think that's a problem. I think we can still defer it and look at them issues. The applicant has got to suggest whether it's abortive works or not. It's not up to us to say whether it is or not. I think it's important that we're sending them a message, say, look, most of these can be addressed. We've got to make a decision on the reason for refusal, as is set out here in one, and that's us. That's us as a committee. You've done the sequential test. All the other information is there. Is there a special circumstance in which we can accept that? I don't know.
Thank you, Chair. Just briefly, if you can hear me. The layout is included, as you're aware of that, members. So are you saying to the applicant that the layout must be amended because of the proximity and the impact on residential? Are you supportive of that? So,
come on, David. I asked this morning about what is the boundary treatment. We don't know what the boundary treatment is. If, in actual fact, the applicant would put a boundary there where no one can see into that side of it, then that will stop all the issues that were raised. But we haven't got that information, have we?
No, that would normally be conditioned.
Yeah.
The layout was before you.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just making that
I've
point.
no issues with the layout, to be quite honest with you.
Right. Thank
That's
you.
me personally.
I think what's needed is, as Paul says, we need to know what the boundary treatment will be, or what is going to be there to stop headlights if the drive-through residents to stay there, in reflecting into them houses that are in proximity, which only the applicant is ever going to be able to tell us what that is. So I think that needs to come back from the applicant as well.
In the first
Yeah. Yeah.
So far, we've had Paul moving deferral and moved by Councillor Pinnock, seconded by Councillor Pattison for deferral. Those in favour of deferral, please show. 7-0. Next, it's page 59.
Right. Thank you very much, Chair. My name is Bill Toppin. I'm the case officer for this proposal. This is one you visited this morning. It was your first site visit. If you recall, we stopped down here on Bankwood Lane and had a look across here, and we also drove past the frontage. Application site, 3.2 hectares. It's located at the junction of Geldert Road and Bankwood Way. It's part of the larger Centre 27 complex, which contains a range of uses as employment and business uses, as well as obviously the retail and leisure, and that's the cinema there. The site is currently occupied by a number of uses, including a garage, car wash. There are pallets stored on the site and a haulage area. There's also a significant part of the site at the bottom area that is not developed. The site slopes down quite considerably from Geldert Road to the south, down along Bankwood Way. It's unallocated on the Unitary Development Plan, but it's within an employment priority area in the emerging local plan. What's proposed is an outline application to clear the site and erect 14,562 square metres of Class A1 retail space, non-food. Only access is applied for at this stage, but there is an indicative layout and massing drawings which show that the development will likely, if it's approved, include up to 8 units, ranging in size between 325 to 765 square metres. They will be arranged in a stepped situation, going down the site on platforms created. There are 3 potential access points off Bankwood Way, 1, 2 and 3 there, into a large car park area of 453 spaces. Service access is taken off Geldert Road. It's been indicated by the applicants that if completed, this would generate up to 300 full-time equivalent 300 jobs. Issues before you. Site is an employment priority area, therefore our policies B4 in the UDP and PLP8 in the emerging plan are relevant. These policies presume to protect employment land for employment generating uses and to ensure that any new development on that site doesn't prejudice or conflict with the operation of any neighbouring users. Guidance in the MPPF allows for a degree of flexibility as to what we classed as an employment generating use. It can extend to other uses other than B-class uses, and our emerging local plan refers to town centre developments, which includes retail, as viable economic development. As such, given the potential to deliver up to 300 jobs, complete the development of the site in its entirety for employment use, a retail use will not conflict with neighbouring users either on either side of the site or across the road. We consider that the scheme accords with our policies in terms of employment priority and the local plan. In terms of retail policy, site is located in an out-of-centre location. and as such, a full sequential test has been required, as well as a retail impact assessment. The sequential test, first of all, a total of 36 sites across the district, which the entire district have been looked at. The number of sites was increased at the request of our consultants to ensure a robust sequential approach was undertaken. The vast majority of the sites are unavailable or below the threshold, and other sites that might have been large enough, which includes some on the edge of Huddersfield, are earmarked for other purposes in that sense. So we're happy that the sequential test has been robustly carried out, and we raise no objection on that impact. Retail impact assessment has been undertaken, carried out and updated, again in accordance with requirements from our consultants to ensure the appropriate catchment area and appropriate weightings to ensure a robust assessment of the impact on surrounding centres is presented to you. The varying levels of impact and trial diversion are detailed in your report, starting from paragraph 10.22 onwards and some accompanying tables there. They indicate the levels of trade diversion in each centres. Based upon a robust assessment, it's considered the proposal is unlikely to have a significant adverse impact upon the trading characteristics of any of those existing centres, such we are raising no objections to this use in retail policy terms. For your information, there is another retail application in close proximity to this that's current. It's not before you at the moment there, but this is the application site here, and this is the other application. This is the Centre 27, former business park. Obviously, the fact that there's another application is a material consideration that we bring to your attention, but we're not in a position on this one to bring it to you yet for consideration, as we require a significant amount of additional information, highways, traffic and retail policy. But you need to make you aware that is a potential one in the pipeline. At this point, if I may, through you, Chair, I could ask Peter Firth to take you through the highways and traffic issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Discussions have been ongoing with the applicant since September 2017, when pre-application scoping of the assessment methodology was held. A sound baseline has been established through a comprehensive series of counts undertaken on Friday, Saturday and Sunday in October 2017. Trip generations associated with the development are based on the two adjacent retail parks and are therefore representative of local conditions. The estimated generation is 481 two-way trips on a Friday PM peak, 864 two-way trips on a Saturday peak and 888 two-way trips on a Sunday peak. It's important to note that not all of those trips are new to the network, as the users of this development will currently be shopping elsewhere. The distribution of trips aligns with the trade diversion estimates in the retail impact study, and that estimates that around 50% of trips will be diverted from the existing nearby retail parks. Access is gained primarily from an improved Gelded Road Bankwood Way junction, which will be signalised. 3 access points off Bankwood Way will access the car park, and 1 access off Gelded Road will provide access for servicing. A safety audit has been provided. That's highlighted some minor issues which will be addressed at detailed design. A travel plan has been submitted, which includes measures to encourage walking, cycling and the use of public transport. The pedestrian environment within the whole of the existing retail park has been reviewed, and the applicant has agreed to fund required improvements to that. Highways England have assessed the impact on the M62 motorway junction and have no objections. On that basis, Highways have no objections to this application.
Thank you. Final issues. Whilst the application is in outline, the indicative proposals show the site can be redeveloped, providing a more active and attractive frontage on what is a fairly prominent gateway site into Kirklees. It's a fairly untidy arrangement at the moment. Also, that it can take account of the topography stepping down to the south. The site can be satisfactorily remediated and drained. Those issues will be the subject of conditions and obviously come in at the same time as any reserved matters proposal. Likewise, there is an opportunity, if possible, retaining some of the trees within the site to deliver a biodiversity enhancement. All of these issues would be subject to, I recommend, subject to condition. We have received advice against the granting the planning permission from the Health and Safety Executive. However, in such cases, if the local planning authority is minded to grant the permission, if the permission is of merit, it's open to us to refer that to the Health and Safety Executive under the planning guidance, and they have an option to call that in or intervene. Likewise, given the scale of the development and the fact that it's out of centre under the circular guidance 209, this has to be referred, if we're minded to approve it, has to be referred to the Secretary of State. Our recommendation, therefore, is to delegate back to officers to refer the scheme and our report for approval to both the HSE and the Secretary of State, if they don't intervene, to secure a Section 106, which would deliver two things: the pedestrian improvements, these dots here are crossing improvements, drop curves and so on, a survey across the entirety of the site, plus a travel plan monitoring fee of £15,000, £3,000 a year for 5 years. Impose all relevant conditions, including those that are on your list, and then issue the decision. Thank you.
We have one speaker, and that's Jonathan Ainley, who's the agent.
Good afternoon. Jonathan Ainley speaking on behalf of the applicant, Ogden Estates. Given the positive recommendation from officers, I don't intend to say too much today, but I want to thank officers for their efforts in respect of getting us to this position. Since we first submitted this as a pre-application inquiry in May 2017 and subsequently as an application back in early February, we've worked extensively with officers. This has included satisfying the Council's specialist external retail consultant. Following these negotiations, we note there are no technical objections in respect of drainage, ecology or retail impact. We've also worked with Highways England, as you've heard, and the Council's internal highway team to ensure proposals are acceptable with regard to the impact on highway safety and the road network. As expressed by officers, the applicant has also committed to a significant payment to fully fund improvements to pedestrian safety within the wider retail park. We're pleased to note that ward members have also expressed support for the proposals, recognising the positive benefits it will deliver to the area. It's perhaps worth mentioning that the applicant has engaged with the existing tenants on the site throughout the process. If members are minded to approve this application, a reserved matters application would need to follow to enable development to commence. The grant of outline planning permission would provide certainty to all parties and would, with an estimated 12 to 18-month period for all necessary matters to be resolved, it would allow for further discussions with the tenants. Ogden have a long-standing commitment to investing in Kirklees, and this proposal is anticipated to create an additional 200 to 250 jobs while significantly improving the appearance of the key gateway site. Given the officer recommendation and positive benefits of the scheme, we hope members will feel able to support the proposals. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, I'd like to support the scheme. I mean, this whole of Junction 27 has been a mess for 30 years since, unfortunately, councillors then refused to really accept what was happening or what was really needed on that site when RAM first acquired all the part of the site and started to develop it. Anyway, having said that, that's why it's been a bit of a hodgepodge all these years, but it's great to see something, I think, come along which does significantly improve the gateway, as been said. As a shopper there, I've always found that it's very difficult for there being shops on one side, then the restaurants and the cinemas on the other side. I mean, it's somewhere you actually want to make a day trip to and shop and eat and go to the cinema in the evening or whatever. So, I mean, I think this really would complete the development and tidy it up, certainly. And certainly the additional 106 agreement to improve access around the whole of the site would be absolutely, is very much to be welcomed. So, yeah, I will move acceptance of the recommendation.
Thank you, Chair. Well, however we look at Junction 27, it's always a nightmare when you go up there and you drive up there. But, I mean, this site at the moment, it absolutely is an eyesore, and I think, to be honest, this is probably a really good opportunity to get something done with it. Create 200 to 250 jobs. The 106 agreement to help improve the connections for maybe pedestrians to walk about, so that might actually reduce the amount of traffic driving between different sections. So yeah, I'm quite happy to support it, and I'll second Councillor Patterson's, the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Chair. This is actually an accidental retail park, as Councillor Patterson has alluded to. The original intention of the whole site was for industry, and it started downhill with the showcase. Whilst I can't think of a planning reason for refusing this, I'm still not sure that it does bring to any sort of conclusion the rehabilitation, if you like, of the whole area, because this site is actually relatively remote from all the other retail uses. If you look at it in isolation, it's a really, really good development, and I think the applicants have gone to a lot of trouble to make their site attractive. It's a pity that some of the rest of the retail park isn't as good as that. And actually, I think some parts of the retail site are not very friendly to pedestrians at all, particularly if you're trying to cross the road that gives access to IKEA. That's a bit dodgy. It's a business development. It's creating jobs. So I can't sort of offer an objection on that. But I think somehow or other we need to do a lot more to make it into a more friendly retail site. And not least, it seems to me, in terms of the public transport access to this site, which is absolutely diabolical. That's no reflection on the bus services that are there. They are just not enough.
To quickly, Chair, I agree with Councillor Patterson and Councillor Bellamy. I'm quite happy to support this. What's the extent of the 106's bill? What's the financial extent of the 106?
I would say today, so I say it will be worked out fully, but it's about £97,000, yeah. So, but that's obviously cumulatively, but about there.
Thank you. Well, I agree with most of it. What is
good about it, it's going to look a sight better than what it did this morning, because it's a mess, that site. Anything they do to that site to improve it, they'll get my support. And I think the fact that there's all those things now, I know Andrew's not right happy with the traffic movements, and there isn't enough public transport, but they can work on that. If they find they need more public transport, surely somebody in Leeds or somewhere will get off the backside and say, right, let's provide some more buses. Simple as that. Simple to me anyway, because I'd do that. So yes, it gets my support.
Right. This has been moved by Councillor Pattison and seconded by Donna. This site just reminds me, have you ever seen that sketch with Morecambe and Wise with Andrew Previn? Eric Morecambe's playing piano. And this is playing all the right notes, but not necessarily in the right order. This is what this entire site is. It's all right, but it's all at the wrong place. So I get taken up there regular, be my wife, shouting and screaming. I still don't like it, but so like Donald says, we can start and build on it, for want of a better thing. All those in favour, please show. 7-0. Crack. Next, page 91. This is Green Gardens at Golka. If you remember, we had a site visit this morning.
So it's item 14.
Oh, sorry. I'm that eager to go that I've overjumped. It's item 14 next. Page 77.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Adam Walker. I'm the case officer on this application. It's a reserve matters application for residential development on this triangular-shaped piece of land, which is in Brockholes. Slopes up from Lancaster Lane up to New Mill Road. You've got the Riverhome View estate to the west. Outline consent was granted by this committee in 2016 for residential development on the site, with an approved access arrangement off Riverhome View, which you can see down towards the southern end, onto Lancaster Lane and up to the site. Approval is now sought for the layout, scale, appearance and the landscaping of the site. The application is before the committee at the request of Councillor Greaves. This photo shows the site looking from New Mill Road, so as you can see, slopes quite steeply down towards Lancaster Lane and the houses on Riverhome View. This is another view from the same point, just showing the houses on New Mill Road that are set up from the site. And then this is looking from the other end of the site, again down to the houses on Riverhome View. As you can see, overgrown piece of land. And this is looking from Lancaster Lane, which would form the access for the site. Houses up at the top on New Mill Road. Just one more photo looking towards the access off Riverhome View. So the proposed layout is for 9 large detached houses. It's been reduced down from 10 following negotiations with the applicant. At outline stage, there was an indicative layout submitted, which was for 22 units. It was 16 semi-detached houses and 6 flats. There are some similarities between the general layout, although this scheme that's now before members is for a lot less intensive form of development. The houses are all 4 storeys, and given the topography, the houses are dug into the site. We've got a row of 4 houses perpendicular to Lancaster Lane, which you can see on this section, which rise up towards New Mill Road. And then these row of 4 houses here, well, row of 5 houses, these 4 have been dug down into the site. There's been an amendment to the scheme which has lowered them below the level of Lancaster Lane.
There have also been changes to the design of these houses, which I'll just show you now, to try and mitigate the massing, which you can see an asymmetrical roof, which has enabled the eaves to be lowered. It means the ridge line is set further back away from Lancaster Lane. This section drawing just shows I'll just show this plan actually. This just indicates how far the houses have come down. You can see the red lines at the top. That's where the ridge lines were originally, and then the red lines at the bottom show where the eaves are. So you can see how far the houses have been reduced in terms of the massing. This section drawing just shows the houses up on New Mill Road, and then there's a stepping down to the houses on the application site, and then you have got bungalows and two-storey houses next door on Lancaster Lane, but you're retaining that sort of natural stepping up the valley side. It's generally the roofs that would be visible from New Mill Road, plus the gable end of plot 4, which you can see just there, be the top part of plot 4 that you can see from New Mill Road just there. As detailed in the report, acceptable separation distances are achieved between the new dwellings and existing houses. Facing materials, of course, natural stone and imitation blue slate, which would harmonise with the surrounding area. Highways are satisfied with the internal access arrangements, and the layout is acceptable to the lead local flood authority. In summary, the reduction in the number of dwellings and the changes that have been made to reduce the massing of the properties closest to Lancaster Lane are such that the proposals are now considered to be acceptable to officers. Thank you, Chair.
We have a couple of speakers. We have Gaynor Halliday, who objects to the application.
Thank you, everybody. My name's Gaynor Halliday, and I live on Riverhome View at the end of Lancaster Lane. And like many of the early applications, this seems to have been rushed through fairly quickly because the new plans only came in 11 days ago. I want to draw the committee's attention to the external access arrangements for the development, as I don't believe they're clearly shown on the plans, and which is why I've produced this little document for you to look at. Although Kirklees Highways Development Management state that access has already been approved, I believe that there are some material changes in the subsequent application. The applicant said that the scheme will be supported by a highways statement which will provide further details of the wider highway and access arrangements to the site, but I don't believe there is one so far. And Highways state in the original consultation in August that the application provided insufficient information to allow a highway assessment to be concluded. I've got 2 points. If we look at the plan, the document, particularly the top 2 images, you will see that firstly there's a very long pinch point, which is about 30 metres, which is 5 car lengths. That's the bit in the purple outline. And that's between two supporting walls of existing properties. This, according to the plan submitted in 2016, which is the one on the right-hand side at the top, you will see there's a purple arrow to that, and it actually states it's 3.45 metres wide. Now, the Kirklees Design Guide, which was published in October 2018, states that housing developments of this size require a minimum carriageway of between 4.8 and 5.5 metres, plus a 0.6 hard margin on either side for pedestrians. So a total minimum width of 6 metres, if the road is just to be a shared surface. As Lancaster Lane is currently a footpath, it really ought to have a dedicated raised pavement of 2 metres as a footpath well used by children, mothers with pushchairs and older pupils en route to Brockles Primary and Holmfirth High Schools. To meet the applicant's assertion in the design and access statement that no public footpaths are affected by this planning application, the footpath needs to be maintained along the whole of the lane. I believe that making a Lancaster Lane into a road will jeopardise public safety, and this is contrary to Highway Design Guide, which states pedestrians should be prioritised. I'm sorry, I'm gabbling now because I've realised I've only got about 30 seconds. Access and turning is my second point. Original application in 2016 showed access using part of the proposed development on Urban Green Space 909 as a turning circle, etc. That's on this piece here as well. Although the design and access statement in the August 2018 application asserted that vehicle turning facilities will be achieved within the site to allow for service and emergency vehicles to enter and exit the site safely and easily, concerns were raised from highways regarding turning facilities. The later plan, November 2018, shows how these might have been addressed. It's clear that the new plan, if you look at the bottom right-hand corner, intends to use a chunk of the field, now referred to by locals as the pig field. While this field has been granted outline planning on appeal, well, I want to know, is it okay just to take this chunk of urban green space and turn it into a road? The new provision also shows the turning circle at the head of River Home View takes away the visitor parking and the turning circle. It's blocked off by a new pavement. Both these fall outside the location plan of the application, and I want to know, is this legal and right? And could you consider that, please?
Okay, thank you. We've got Hamish Gledhill, who's speaking on behalf of the applicant.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Hamish Gledhill, speaking on behalf of the applicant for this application. I don't want to go on too long about it because the officer's report is very good and we commend that. But members clearly appreciate that, as with many sites, the topography of development sites like this is difficult with many challenges. You saw that the indicative layout for this site had 22 houses on it with 16 semi-detached houses and 6 flats. This scheme shows a far better layout with a less intensification use of the site, which reduces the traffic coming out of the site and reduces the traffic along Lancaster Lane. We have had highways information submitted to the council and confirmation that the site does agree with the necessary standards and regulations. Much of the houses are accessed through non-adoptable roads, i.e. shared private driveways. As the officer pointed out, we have amended the scheme significantly since it was introduced. Whilst the buildings represent, I think the officer said, 4 storeys, the attic space is used and the ground level is actually virtually subterranean when looked at from Lancaster Lane, and that is where the garage would be for the houses, so it is actually probably not used for habitable space. So actually from Lancaster Lane the buildings look more or less like a traditional 2-storey building. And we've made good use of the site to kind of put more space on a lower ground floor and within the attic. We believe this is a good use of the site. As I say, it's far less intensification than was shown in the outline application. We've worked well with the planning officer to provide a good layout, and I'd ask you respectfully to approve this application. Thank you.
Members? Councillor Fair.
Thank you, Chair. Well, it's some while ago since we actually had this plan before us, and we refused it because of the road width and the very steep incline where they basically wanted to put the properties. The width of the road, by the way, is no different now than it was then. It's approximately, according to this map, the pinch point is adjacent to is 3.45 metres. Insufficient to meet Kirklees highways. That was 2018, October. Minimum for the carriageway is 4.8 metres. Now, you can't widen Lancaster Lane anymore. Lancaster Lane has always been a narrow road. It was initially the road to Lancaster's Mill a long number of years ago. The actual site itself is on a very steep incline, and to me, you know, we're pushing houses everywhere and we're all going to have a problem eventually. Highways say it's fine, but have they ever gone, has anybody from Highways travelled down New Mill Road at 8 or half past in the morning and been stuck in traffic right the way to Lockwood? I doubt it. Well, I have on many occasions, including this morning, by the way. So, and have we got any information from Yorkshire Water on the sewage system, because every time we've a lot of rain down there, the first thing that happens, the sewers get full, the lids come off the sewage, the lids lift, and before you know it, we've got everything in the road down there. And this has been going on for 20 years. It hasn't just started, and up to press, nobody has addressed that. Certainly Yorkshire Water haven't at that point there. So there's all these things to take into consideration. It's okay, it's only 9 houses, but this is the whole story. It's only 9, it's only another 10, it's only another 20, and before you know where you are, you've got a big problem. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to just see what the rest of the committee think, but I know my situation. I will personally go for to refuse this. Thank you.
Bearing in mind this is a reserved matters application, and given that the principle of development on the site is already there, I'd like some answers. I don't know whether Mr. Walker's got a copy of this, how you react to that, particularly the one in the bottom right, where it says that a piece of land that's not part of the site is being used in order to improve the highway. Thank you.
Through you, Chair. Yes, to pick up on this issue with the access, this plan that you can see on the projector, this is the approved plan from the outline application, which approved the access. So we've got this this arrangement off River Home View onto Lancaster Lane. That's the approved drawing. They've got to construct the development in accordance with this drawing. As part of the reserve matters, we're not considering that point of access. It's just the internal arrangements or the internal access arrangements within the site as part of the layout that we're considering, rather than the point of access. We're looking at the highways. It's this estate road into the site, and we've got a condition on the outline permission which requires details of the estate road, detailed design to be agreed.
Right. So, if I understand you correctly, that bit of alteration to the road is actually off-site, and therefore not part of this application in that sense.
Yeah, not part of this application in that sense, in that this is an approved plan on the outline concept, so we've got permission to build, to construct that access.
Sorry about this, but that doesn't look the same as that, and I just wonder whether there is any way that the applicant can do this legally. I mean, it may be that they own the land, in which case we need to see where the blue line is, you know, and it sorry, at the moment it's not making sense to me.
Sorry, it is confusing because they are different, but if you look at what's actually in front, it's about the access road, isn't it? Not about the layout of the houses on the other approved plans, the one you're looking at, because it's about what's in your layout. All you've got to say is that access as shown on the approved plan. It looks exactly the same. What's different? I know the houses layout's different from what's shown on the previous approval to this one, but that's not before you today. So I appreciate it's confusing, but it's not sort of central to the decision.
It's confusing, but is it legal?
It's entirely legal. It's just the information isn't the same. But the point is, look at all you have to assess is, are you happy with the layout of the reserved matters in front of you? Not the layout of the houses next to it. I'm getting confused now. Not the layout of the other plan, because that's not here for consideration. So it's those houses and how the two access points tie together. Nothing else. That's the reserve matters today. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I think sometimes when you look at some of these applications, you realise what developers attempt to do to not to supply any affordable homes, because the density on this is quite low, and 5 bedrooms. I think it's not accommodating for people. I think it's extremely unfair. But the very fact is, if you look at 4.1, and there's a comment there, an appeal against the refusal dismissed solely on the grounds that a planning obligation had not been provided in respect of the affordable housing. I think all he's tried to do is try to ensure that he doesn't have, or he or she, I apologise, I don't want to be sexist, he or she doesn't have to provide any affordable homes. And I think this is up to us whether we accept that these properties meets the density requirements, and I don't think they do. And in particular, they're looking for a market of 5 bedroom properties where if you don't get the amount, you get it in quality and actually the numbers of bedrooms, to be quite honest with you, and bigger properties. And that's all he's done. He's just adjusted this. This is my view, as I say. He's just adjusted that to ensure that he maintains the same profit margin without giving a single penny back to the local authority, once again taking us for mugs. And I'm sorry, officers have fallen for that same trap. It's not a criticism, I apologise, but that's exactly the way I feel.
Thank you. Right, well, I was going to say something about Lancaster Lane, but it seems, obviously, we've been told that isn't completely irrelevant. But I am going to actually agree with a lot of what, believe it or not, and this is a shock, because this is the second time this has only ever happened. I am actually going to agree with what some of my parish council colleagues have said, which is, it's over-intensification, they're too large, the 3-story, I'm with you, I think 5 bedrooms is just, 5-bedroom properties are just way too big. It's a way of getting out of affordable homes. Flood management needs looking at, drainage needs looking at down there, because it floods, we all know it floods. And there's the other issue as well of the wildlife down there, and I think that needs looking further into, and I won't say the word. So on that, if Donald did move refusal, I'll second it.
Design's subjective, isn't it? And layouts are subjective. It's probably opposite to where you were at, Councillor, where you said put some more on. Not maybe the size of houses, and that might be the issue that you're getting to. I mean, look at the grain of the area. They are larger houses. They are attractive landscape settings. Well, yeah, all right. Sorry, guys. Because the lighting's not good enough. We know the area and we know the topography, and it's very difficult to say that these houses aren't in keeping, because we've approved lots of similar styles in similar layouts, using the hillside, stepping up, playing with roof levels. I understand the concerns, but we are at reserve matters. We didn't want it as a council. We all tried to refuse it, and the appeal was allowed, and a layout showing even more units of different sizes, and whatnot was shown to that planning inspector, and that was acceptable. You sort of are where you are with this one, members. I mean, we can articulate design because it is subjective, but it's very difficult to say that it's not in keeping. But we can articulate that if that's really what you want us to do.
Chair, I agree totally what Matthias has just said. I feel sympathy for Donna and Donald and I'm not going back on what I said. I really do think they tried to make mugs out of us, to be quite honest with you. But in this occasion, I don't think there's anything we can do about it. I think it would go through the appeal system, and I think if you're looking for someone to move officers' recommendations, I know we've already got a refusal. I'm quite happy to move officers' recommendation because there's very little. We can say everything we want to say here as far as this one is concerned, and I don't think it's going to matter a jot. The messages we ought to be sending is to saying to officers, you should be saying the exact same things as what we are saying. And, you know, take into consideration that, not accepting, because they will play you off against us as well. And I'm not very happy with that situation. And it leaves us making the decisions that are extremely uncomfortable.
Right. Let's see if we can sort this out. I think I ought to point out that it was us who granted outline permission after, or 2 years after, a previous application was refused by us, and then refused on appeal as well. Can we take into account how many houses were on the indicative layout? Because I get the feeling that what we've got here is a number of properties that is far less than what was on the indicative layout.
Through you, Chair. Yeah, it was 27 units indicatively shown at outline, and the feeling was from officers and I believe this committee that it was an over-intensification, it was over-development, it was the density was too high, it was equating to about 50 dwellings per hectare. So it has come down quite significantly. The density of River Home View is about 26 dwellings per hectare. This scheme comes in at about 20, so broadly comparable, but it is on the low side.
Right.
But again, it's whether it's...
Right. Okay. Well, there is a reason for refusal that is underdevelopment of a site. You know, not well. How can I put it? It's usually expressed by, an efficient use of land. Yes, thank you. Quite apart from the issues that Councillor Kane mentioned, you know, about large properties when what we perhaps were looking for was smaller ones. One of the reasons I would offer for refusing is that it is not an efficient use of the site. That you could, in theory, get more properties on there, and indeed, if you've got 4 or 3-storey dwellings with 5 bedrooms, you could achieve a slightly different outcome by putting similar sized dwellings as apartment blocks. I don't know on what kind of tenure, but you know, it's not beyond the wit of designers to come up with something like that would actually get more dwellings on the site. I put that out there for people to.
Just, you said the last one was 27 units. This one is 9 houses. But I suppose them 27 units may have only been. You see, that if that's 27 units, that 27 units doesn't necessarily take up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's still only 9 blocks, whereas this is still only 9 houses. So it's just smaller units. That's what I was thinking you were getting at. So, yeah, but if you did it that way, then you're going to increase the amount of cars, aren't you? Sure. Or whatever.
Notwithstanding Paul's off-stage comment, then the 27. A question first off. The 27 was meant to be entirely on that triangle, or below the main house as well.
Yeah, just to clarify, it's 22 units indicatively shown at outline stage. So it's these blocks of semis and then 6 flats just here. So it was 22 units altogether. But
What it was.
Fair. This is a recap. I've got, I think, Donna seconding somebody to refuse. Donald moved. And then, so far, so we're taking officer's recommendation first, which is moved by Paul, seconded by Carol. Those in favour of the officer's recommendation, please show. Against. For. Those against. 2. Abstain. 1. So that is accepted on officer's recommendation. I think I'm going to need a drink tonight. Next, we do move this time to page 91. This is Green Gardens at Golka, and it's for 2 semi-detached dwellings, and it's Nick.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Nick Hurst, Case Officer. This application seeks the erection of a semi-detached pair of dwellings. It is brought to committee as the site is urban green space, therefore represents a departure. The site is accessed off Arthur Street. There is a footpath, which is not a prow, connecting Arthur Street to two green gardens. For planning history, the site has had 4 approvals for outline permission for residential development, each for a single unit. This is the first full application and seeking 2 units. It is proposed for the site to be unallocated in the local plan. Just to quickly run through, this is the site from Arthur Street. You can see the access being by these timber units and the path here. The dwelling will be located approximately thus. And here from Green Gardens, again, dwelling located approximately there, and there's the access to the path. The site has a gentle slope to the rear, and as you can see, this is the current site, current state of the site. Here is the proposed front elevation with an example with the neighbouring dwellings' height shown next to it. It would be sited further forward from Arthur Street, however, off plan, the dwellings do step forward within the street, and the turning head does set in there. Of note, the rear elevation of 2 Green Gardens overlooks the garden as opposed to a wall. The report in front of members outlines the officer's consideration on the proposal. In summary, given the clear physical and practical separations from the urban green space and the historic planning permissions, officers are supportive of the principle of development. Turning to the local impact, officers are satisfied that the dwellings would suitably harmonise with the built environment without causing harm to the amenity of neighbouring residents. There are no highway-related concerns. Therefore, officers recommend approval. Nothing further to add, Chair.
I approve the recommendation.
I second it. This application is being moved by Councillor Pattison, seconded by Councillor Walker. Those in favour, please show. Begrudgingly, that's 7 for, none against. That's gone through. Finally, page 105. This is the Whitehall Road, Wyke. It's a shared boundary with us and our old friends in Bradford again. David. Thanks.
Right, this application is reported to Strategic Planning Committee as the application is a cross-boundary site, partly within Bradford Metropolitan District Council. The majority of the site, including the vehicular access and original house, is at the front, and actually the vehicular access is to the side. And I'll just pull up another plan that shows you the boundary there, so you'll be able to see the boundary with Bradford. The vehicular access is actually off this cul-de-sac and is in the over the boundary, the district boundary. The garage, existing garage, is to the rear. It's a semi-detached property. It's 2-storey and landscape gardens to the front and back. There's a few photographs. The site is unallocated land, both on the Kirklees UDP and in the local plan. Planning permission is sought for the demolition of the existing double garage to be replaced by a new double garage, demolish the existing conservatory, which will be, there will be a single storey and rear extension erected. That's the side view of the house. That's the cul-de-sac, side view of the house. That's the rear of the property. Beyond the rear boundary is open fields with obviously shrubland and trees. Just whiz through these photographs. So the plan at the top shows the proposal, shows the existing layout of the double garage. And the plan at the bottom shows the proposal where there is a bedroom at ground floor, living area at the rear, and garage and utility also at the rear. There are 3 off-street parking spaces. Officers consider the parking provision would be met. In terms of visual amenity and residential amenity, the proposal is considered to be acceptable. That is the roof plan of the proposed extensions. That's all, Chair.
Councillor Pinnock.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'd better say something, but the only reason it's here, and because it would otherwise be decided by officers is because the Bradford boundary happens to go through the garden. I just out of curiosity, what is the garden allocated as in the Bradford local plan? Because I mean, this does show how ridiculous it is to have a boundary in such a location. Because do they even bother to allocate that bit of those gardens, that whole row of houses along there? All their gardens are, or part of their gardens are in Bradford, it's a bit silly, shall we say? I agree with the application, incidentally.
In answer to that, Chair, we have consulted Bradford and they haven't come back to us to indicate what the land use policy was, but they have confirmed no objections to the scheme. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, David. Robert, seconder. So this has been moved by Councillor Pinnock, seconded by Councillor Bellamy. Those in favour, please show. That's 7-0, thank you. And it's time to go home.